in the lead here at Villa Park, and they celebrate in front of those
First one off mute, host of the show. Welcome back to Boropod. I'm not Nate. He's on domestic duty. He's probably fishing something gross out of a bathtub as we speak, so I wouldn't swap him for the world. But joining me to discuss Stevenage's last two fixtures are Greg Kett and Nick White. How are you both this evening, gentlemen?
I am in a foul mood, and I don't think this is going to change it, to be honest with you.
Unlikely. How about you, Nick?
I'm thrown off again by us recording on a Wednesday, but I completely appreciate that was also the reason we're recording on a Wednesday, so I will deal with it.
Yeah, whose idea was it? Whose idea was it to record on a Wednesday after last night?
Funny. So pulling back the curtain, we discussed getting together on Monday and talking about the Burton game, and then we're like, we've got another one on Tuesday. Let's just wait. And now I wish we'd gone on Monday, because then we could just skip this game entirely. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's talk the Burton game on Saturday first. So, travelled away from home, played a side, kind of middle of the bottom half. Let's get that the right way around. But they'd had a decent upturn in form recently to drag themselves out of the relegation zone. We played the kind of standard 5-3-2, 3-5-2 wing-back sort of formation we've been playing for a while. Luther, Good and Pidge as the three centre-backs. Pattenden, right wing-back, Early left wing-back. Louis Thompson, Harvey White as the deeper-lying midfielders, with Phillips further forwards. And then Matt Phillips and Jamie Reid leading the line. What can you say about this game? It was a relatively soporific one, I would say. Like, there was not a lot of action in the first half. Stevenage took the lead on 44 minutes when Pidge won the ball and passed it through to Matty Phillips, who laid it off to Dan Phillips, who laid it through to Reedy. Drove at the defender, cut inside him, and fired a left foot shot past a keeper who will look back at that and think, I should probably have done better, really. Anything else stand out for you about the first half of this one, and thoughts on the goal?
I thought Reid was offside. It looked close. I didn't get many angles of it, but at the time I was half expecting the liner's flag to go up. But he took it well, and it was just one of those away performances that you can't really complain about. Like, we weren't outstanding. We were playing a side who didn't look particularly high on confidence, even though their form had turned around a little bit in recent time. They're not a good side, but at the end of the day, whilst we didn't necessarily put them to bed and put 2 or 3 past them, it was just one of those sort of professional away performances, went and got the job done, and you're never gonna moan about that, even if it should have been and could have been more. You got to take 3 points on the road every week. So there was I think the first half, I mean, the goal came just before half time, but we didn't ever really look under the cosh. We always looked pretty comfortable, and obviously nicking the goal when we did is always going to be a real gut punch for them. And in the second half, it just kind of petered out into very little. It didn't, as I say, didn't really feel like a game where we ever looked under major threat. Whether it was 0-0 or 1-0, it always felt like it was relatively comfortable. It was just a matter of putting the ball in the back of the net and going from there.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just nice to get a result on the road. It's one of those ones where it was going on for so long that we were not only performing badly on the road, but actually shipping a lot of goals and not picking up any points, that you would take anything at that stage. And so, not just because I haven't seen a huge amount of the game, but seeing a 1-0 win away from home, I couldn't care less how we played in that respect. I'd take 3 points and run with it. So,
absolutely, you're right. We really needed to see a return to that defensive solidity that we'd lacked in recent away trips, and it's been a long time coming, that away win, so it's good to see it. Quick look at the match stats. Burton had 60% possession, but we limited them to 5 shots, 1 on target, really holding them at arm's length, while Stevenage had 10 shots, 6 on target. And the second half, as the stats suggest, really mostly relatively calm considering you're defending a 1-goal lead away from home. The closest either side came to scoring was Stevenage another couple of times. Most notably when they pinched the ball high and Matt Phillips couldn't convert a really good opportunity to make it 2-0, which could have made the bit of extra time where Burton really threw the kitchen sink at us for an equaliser a little bit more comfortable to listen to, but they fired a couple of times into the side netting. They didn't force a difficult save from the keeper. So as you say, job well done away from home. A relatively comfortable victory, certainly more comfortable than the 1-0 scoreline suggests against a side in the bottom half who, as we said on the last show, it's a must-win game if you're serious about getting into the playoff places. And if you're not going to be picking up 3 from that, then you're going to be finishing 12th, 10th, 14th, somewhere around that mid-table range. You're going to slip away from things. So positives to take from this. Any other thoughts on this one?
It was a good response to, obviously, when we played them in the reverse fixture. I think it was a game that we all felt very disappointed walking away from. But being able to keep kind of Beasley and shade Sade, however you say it, to limit
Sade.
I think they had 1 shot on target or something like that at home, and so considering how the reverse fixture went, I think it was just quite nice to see that, like you say, defensive solidity come back, but also just to feel like we've taken something away from Burton Albion this year is always nice.
I do quite like Beasley. He's got something about him. He's not going to score you goals, which is probably a major problem for a number 9. But he's got something. He has got something about him. He does actually feel like a very Stevenage kind of player, to be honest with you.
And to be honest, his goal scoring isn't awful this year. I think he's in double figures.
Is it?
For a Burton team, so it's not like
it's better than I thought.
I think he's probably a very similar kind of profile when you talk about Jamie Reid numbers. That they're very unlikely to hit 15, 20 goals a season on a regular, but you'll see them generally hit close to double figures most years. I don't know what he was like previous at Blackpool. I think, you go. He had 1 good season at Blackpool. He scored 12. He's on 12 for Burton now. He had 12 for Rochdale when they're in League 2. So, he's never been the most prolific, but if he can get into a stride and rhythm, he does get goals.
He's one of those players you can tell he's kind of been brought up in the non-league, and he's kicked around a few sides in the non-league, and sometimes it's not a bad thing necessarily with certain players. If you're lacking certain abilities, you can become quite smart. And I think for me it was we did enough. Just didn't, as I say, we didn't really feel like we overexerted ourselves. Didn't feel like we necessarily had to take the game to them. It was pretty comfortable for the most part. I think opposition wise, it probably worked in our favour, and that's where it probably differs to the Orient game, which we'll get to. But it just felt very much like like I say, it's not many Stevenage games I watch where I'm watching it thinking, don't really feel like stressed out here. I don't feel like they're 1 corner away from getting an equaliser. It felt like we were controlling what we needed to control, and like you said, Pat, they had a few efforts, hit the side netting, etc. But it didn't feel like we were being carved open by them, which to be honest with you is good, because away from home, they're going to chuck the kitchen sink at you towards the end, and to feel like even in the 90th minute that it felt like we weren't going to necessarily throw anything away was a good feeling to have. But mostly down to formation. This formation is, for games like this, I think does work well. And against opposition like this, you feel like you can deal with a Beasley when you've got Pierre Gianni, Charlie Good at the back. But it's when you're up against different opposition where I think where it becomes wanting a little bit.
Yeah, it feels very committed to this system now. So subs in this one were all pretty much like for like, certainly in terms of position. Houghton for Louis Thompson, Roberts and Labala for Reid and Phillips up front on 80 minutes, and then Dan Phillips off for Dan Kemp on 92 and Pattenden off for Dan Sweeney on 92. And without Phoenix or Campbell on the bench, really the only wide midfield option is Roberts there, and maybe LeVar out of position, depending how you do it. So it's very committed to all of the width, or the majority of the width, coming from those wing backs, with no flexibility to change that in game if you want, or not natural flexibility to change that mid game if you want to.
And I think we'll probably get into that more with Orient, but I think we equally have seen that where we've spoken a lot about Reed's effectiveness, he has benefited from that system change of having a partner up front. I mean, but to be honest, the goals that he's been scoring haven't necessarily been so directly linked to necessarily having a partner. But I think he's got confidence from playing with someone next to him and having a little bit more freedom to move into different areas that isn't relying on him to just stick up front and try and hold the ball up. I mean, before the goal last night, that was his third in a row that he's had a goal contribution. Goal against Wickham, got an assist against Stockport, and then a goal against Burton. So, and then obviously the goal last night with Orient with the penalty. So he's now got a bit of confidence. You'd like to think if you now put some good players around him, creative players around him that are going to feed him the ball in good areas, he's going to take more shots. He's going to look to drive forward a lot more positively than we've seen at the kind of latter stage of the season. And it's an opportunity to go on a bit of a run as a striker, which would be pretty important for us to be knocking on the door of the playoffs, especially if we're going to struggle with picking up points like against Orient at home.
You know what you get with Jamie Reed. Like, that 1 week he looks full of confidence and he's going to put chances away, and then there's other days that he would just go completely missing. His first touch is all over the place, and he can't keep hold of the ball for more than 2 seconds. I guess you can say the same about a lot of League One footballers at the end of the day, but there's always going to be a level of inconsistency. I think with Reed, I do agree that he's benefited from having Phillips up top with him 100%. Yeah. I think in terms of Phillips, I was singing his praises last week and what he's brought to this team, and I think I stand by that. Even when he's had quieter games, I think he's got that, just something about him. He's a bit smarter than a lot of the players we've got in this side, and I don't think there's any harm whatsoever. But it's when you then switch it up, and we saw that against Orient, which we'll get to. But Reed, for me, I'd rather him play wide than seeing him up front on his own. I think he's actually not to say I want him to see him out wide. I'm not saying that as a choice necessarily, but like if you give me the choice of stick Reed up top on his own or stick Reed out on the right or the left, I'm probably taking him going out wide in that situation. He's got to have someone up with him to play off, and it's got to be someone like a Phillips rather than a Bez, who's just not really. He'd be there with him, but he's not exactly going to be contributing, or even a 10 like Kemp or Roberts. And I don't think he quite has the same impact. You need someone up alongside him, and he has benefited from that, like you said.
Yeah.
I think probably a nice segue into Orient. The challenge we have with system now is we started the year thinking 4-2-3-1 was going to be the way we were going to play. It looked like we had a certain style of how we wanted to play, which was a lot of wing play, and therefore not really relying on Reed to be like a holding 9. And then as the season's developed and we've had to adapt, because we were lent into using him as a bit of a target man, and it just wasn't working. It's not Jamie Reed's game. We've then gone into a 3-back for probably the third game in a row we've played the exact 11 with the Orient game. But actually, we've been playing the 3 for 4, 5, 6 games previous to that. But we're seeing that with them missing players like Chem, like Phoenix, where in games when you actually do need something to come on and be a bit more of a spark, we haven't got it. And it does make me wonder, like Burton, we scored a goal, we got ahead, we saw the game out. If we'd have conceded a goal in that game, did we have enough in that squad to go and get a second?
Not even conceded. Even if it was just 0-0 going into the last 20 minutes,
yeah.
Are you going to have something to go and turn the screw? I think that's why I said the goal came at the perfect time, because it's a gut punch for them, but it's a perfect time for us as well, because scoring a goal before half time is always a good thing as far as I'm concerned. And in this game, it was the perfect timing. If it happened after 10 minutes, I think it could have been a different game still. But it felt like it was definitely a good time for us to go and get that goal. I do think that if it's 0-0 going into 20 minutes before the end, even though there's players on that bench who can make an impact, Roberts, Kemp, not so much Labala, but those two are, can make that impact to come on and change a game. But I think it's neither of those players necessarily work that well in this system the way that it plays now. It's not the same system as what we played under Evans.
Yeah,
it's the same in terms of three at the back, but it's outside of that. It's actually still quite different.
The midfield profile is completely different. Like we've been playing a flat 3 midfield, haven't we? Whereas under Evans, we almost had someone like Reeves who liked to get the ball off of the defence. The midfield 3 we've been using is Harvey White, but he's not the same as Reed. He's not as energetic and quick with the ball in the same way that Reeves was. You had Gilby that was very much a box to box, which really we haven't got a player that has the same level of kind of style and energy as Gilby did, who was really the one that pushed us up the pitch. We're missing that a little bit when we play that flat 3 midfield with the back 3. And so, ultimately we're not playing a game where we're under Evans. We had a massive target man that you kept lumping the ball to when you played 3 at the back, and you skipped half of the players on the pitch to get into the final third. And so, it feels like we're still trying to figure out what is the best team for us in terms of when we're coming up against different opposition. How can we use different players in different ways to get the best out of them? It feels like we're still trying to figure out.
It's a wild thing to say 35 games into the season, but you're right.
We're still trying to figure out what's the best combination of players up against a certain style of team. And it just feels a bit odd to still be in that position where back end of last season we were saying we just need wingers. Really was the big thing is we need wingers. We need wide players because we didn't have any. We signed 2 and now they're not even in the matchday squad for the last 2-3 games. Mm-hmm. It just feels like we're in a bit of that period of transition where we're still trying to figure out what our identity really is and what that therefore means. Systems really don't mean much. It's how you set up, but it's those principles of how you play that are really important. And we just don't seem to have settled into anything quite yet.
3-5-2 was like a plaster, wasn't it? Really, it's a smashing case of emergency formation. That was kind of what that came from, because we went on that horrendous run and it was like, okay, we need to change something. We played 3-5-2 in one game, looked really good. All of a sudden, it's stuck ever since. But I agree with you in terms of, I think when we played that formation under Evans and the back 3 that we had then, you can afford to play a back 3 when you've got Terence Van Kooten, because Terence Van Kooten is that covering defender who's got that extra yard of pace. The back 3 we have right now doesn't have that pace. Even Lufa, I mean, he's certainly quicker than Pigeon and good, but he's not a natural centre half first and foremost. But also, I don't think he has that same level of pace that TVC had. And got found wanting last night, which we'll get to.
Let's get to it. We've been dancing around it long enough. So exactly the same starting 11 as against Burton, which Neil Metcalfe pre-game crowed that was an important thing to our success that he discussed with Revs. And then after the game in his press conference, Revs said, oh, well, maybe I asked a bit too much of them because they looked off their normal capabilities in this one. And I think he was pretty good with his diagnosis of what went wrong in this game. The question then is, why couldn't you spot that during the game? Or if you did spot it during the game, why couldn't you communicate to the players and get them to up their levels in the way they needed to get back competitive? But let's not get ahead of ourselves. We took the lead on 22 minutes. Penalty from a set piece with Pidge getting pulled down by the arm and the top of the shirt. Fairly obvious foul, but not a foul that we always see a penalty given for. So fair play to Breakspear for having the eyes and the balls to actually blow the whistle for once, and a well-taken penalty from Jamie Reid. The keeper went the right way, but he hit it hard and into the corner, avoided the save, got us in the lead. And at that point, you're thinking, we haven't been brilliant in the first quarter, but we've got ahead against a side who are in the relegation zone and whose confidence is pish. They haven't really offered anything either. You can see from how they're playing why they're down where they are. Hopefully we can kick on from here and make ourselves a comfortable night of it. And they absolutely didn't. But thoughts on the first quarter of this game?
It was we didn't really feel like, we didn't feel stretched at any point. We didn't like, it was pretty comfortable without really testing the keeper or testing Orient too much. But they weren't really threatening at that point until the penalty. And the penalty came obviously very much out of the blue. I think we see Pidge in that situation at pretty much 90% of the corners we have. I was amazed. I was still a bit back. Like, I saw him point towards the spot, and I was like, we can't be giving. It's not gone out for a goal kick, so he's got to have given a penalty. But the reaction from the crowd was utterly muted. Even when they realised it was a penalty, it was still really muted. I think there was just a lot of confusion around the penalty. But anyway, nevertheless, put away well. But the first 25 minutes of the game felt comfortable. Didn't really feel like we had to overexert ourselves, which probably is a slight criticism, because I think it's one of those ones you kind of want to be at Orient. You want to be making it difficult for them, and I don't think we necessarily did. It was, would have been another one of those games similar to the Burton game where you can't say we deserved to go a goal up, but at the same time, it wasn't against the run of play either. It was just one of those games that was kind of petering through the first half, and we were fortunate to take the lead. But the reaction to, after going a goal up was then, okay, we'll just protect what we have. We didn't really, again, go and put ourselves on the front foot and put them to the sword, and it ended up costing us.
I think and partially through hindsight, but actually I think it's something that we've probably been critical of all season, is we've spoken about how we went with the exact 11. And when you look at it, you've got Burton away when you've been on a run of 8+ games of not picking up points on the road, versus Orient at home, where we've been relatively strong at home, albeit a lot of draws, against, statistically going into the game, the worst defensively in the league. It felt quite negative in terms of a setup. I can kind of see where you go that we won the last game, you go with the same team, and you see if they can perform again. But I think we saw quite early on, especially in the first half, that Orient didn't want to get on the ball. They were quite happy to sit off. And so having 3 midfielders that are generally quite defensive in nature, or quite kind of sit backish, actually did limit our ability to get on the front foot in that game. And like you say, Greg, like, it didn't feel like we really got out of a gear that meant that we were cruising, but we weren't really threatening in the same way Orient weren't threatening, but they were also pretty comfortable by the feel of it. And so in hindsight, I think we should have been going with something a little bit more front-footed to go at Orient, and ultimately a team that have been defensively weak. We get the penalty through a set piece, and like you say, it didn't feel like we wanted to go and get a second. And when Early then goes and gets injured just before the half-time break, and we have to make another forced change because of a wing-back injury, it felt like we still haven't really understood, like, what do we do in a scenario when one of our wing-backs gets injured? Like, we ended up with Pattendon as a left wing-back, and I don't think Pattendon was having the best of games as a right wing-back anyway. So he was always going to struggle moving over to the other side and trying to manage what actually I think was probably their main threat, which was Mitchell down that right-hand side up against Pidge. And Ballard started to drift across a little bit more, noticing where that threat was. And Charlie Wellens was getting on the ball a little bit more in those areas out on our left-hand side, and you could see as the second half started to develop, you could see where those chances were coming for them, and what you could see what they were trying to do. It wasn't pretty, it wasn't anything exciting, but it was opening up for them. And
it was happening in the first half, though. There was times where Pidge was just being left on an island against Mitchell, and Mitchell had him on toast every single time. He had no quality on the ball to actually do anything with it, apart from when they scored just before half time. That was the only moment of quality he showed pretty much in the entire game in the end. But it was there. He was there for the beating all the time. And even when Saxon was on, like there was this Mitchell was just finding himself up against Pidge, and it was just almost too easy at times. And I think a better quality player and a better quality side put you to the sword way before they ended up scoring what they did. But it was one of those games where, possession-wise, I mean, according to the stats I've got in front of me, Orient ended up with more possession by 54% to 46%. But it felt like that kind of in the first. I don't know what the stats were in the first half, but it felt like in the first half they were standing off and letting us kind of have the ball a little bit more. And we know that's not our strength. We know that's not when we're our best. Like, we don't really want the ball. We kind of want to be. We'd rather play against a team that are going to be a bit more adventurous on us and hit them on the counter. But we have to find a way against teams like Orient, who are going to sit in deep and say, "Oh, come on then, like come and break us down." You got to go and find a way to do that, and not just nick a goal and then expect everything's going to be fine, but to go and then go again when you have gone a goal up. Because that was our issue yesterday. Or last night. We went a goal up, and then it was just pretty much nothingness for the rest of the game. And until Orient all of a sudden the 2-1 up, and then you're chasing it and getting frustrated because their keeper's going down injured for 2 minutes to break the game up, or they're buying cheap fouls, which, let's face it, I mean, probably the best performance I've seen from Breakspear, and I don't like giving the guy credit ever. But, like, you know, it's even the fouls that some of the fouls they 100% kind of bought. You can't really blame them. And I certainly, if it was the other way around and we were away from home against Orient, I'd expect our players to go and do exactly the same kind of thing, throw themselves to the floor, whatever it might be. But we just didn't. I mean, did we test Dennett? I can't think really of a save that he had to make.
He had the one save. Apparently made 3 saves. The only notable one I can think of is in those last 10 minutes where Pidge gets a header off of a Kemp corner and he tips it around the post for another corner. That's the only notable one I can recall. That was a real chance that we actually forced a save out of him. And again,
the only chance I remember was again from a set piece. It was Pidge heading across goal. I think Roberts was coming in at the back post, and I think, Pat, you said on WhatsApp, Harry Cornick scores that. Probably breaks something
breaks
else.
his other leg. Yeah.
But that was the only opportunity in the whole night, really, that I was sitting there thinking, he should have scored that. Like every other chance I felt like we had were what Harvey White had the free kick from 25 yards out that was harmlessly wide in the end. There wasn't really anything else to get excited about or to feel like we were going to go and turn anything around at any point. But I said about in the Burton game, the goal coming at the best possible time. Orient's goal came pretty much the exact same minute at the worst possible time. It was a bit of a sucker punch before half time. You go in 1-0 at half time there. I do think that's a different game completely. That not only put the wind in their sails, but I don't think we adjusted well. And one thing I kind of, this might sound like a bit of a nitpicky moment, but when Saxon was off, they got that free kick, and there was a massive panic to get Freestone on to defend the free kick.
Yeah,
you've used a sub window there that kind of didn't really need to use. You could have also taken half time to have a think about how tactically you want to play this. Like, you kind of rushed Freestone to get him ready. He probably would have been the change you made anyway. But I don't know. Just felt like a moment of sort of inexperience, which, let's be honest here, Rev's not an inexperienced manager anymore. He's must be 150 games, whatever he's managed now.
I think this is
you either need to do it straight away when he's down injured getting treatment, which was like 40 5+4 or something. He came on 45+7, and they'd restarted the game and done another couple of bits before then. You're like, either do it straight away or wait till half time. But yeah, you're right. The halfway house didn't make sense. Getting him on for the last 30 seconds of the half, having played for 10 men with 10 men for like 3 minutes at that point.
I do get it. Like if they go and concede from that set piece, everyone's going to be sitting there being like, "Why is Freestone standing on by the bench?" Like, so I kind of like, I will forgive him slightly in that regard. But yeah, at the same time, I just felt like there was a little bit of A, indecisiveness, and B, inexperience that kind of kicked in there, that I probably would have just said, you defend that set piece. And in fact, as soon as that set piece was defended, it was half time. Not using that sub window first and foremost, which means you've got 3 sub windows in the second half. So you're not forced to necessarily make the 3 changes in one go, which didn't work out anyway, as we'll get to. But yeah, just didn't. I don't think he got it. I don't think he got it right in the second half, putting Pattenden left wing back, like you said, Nick. I think he probably should have gone to 4 at the back at that point and shifted things around.
It's really difficult. I look at some of the games that we've played where we've had these moments that you can never predict that they're going to happen. Passenden at Barnsley away, Saxon last night. Still unclear about what happened with Saxon at Wickham, to be quite honest. But like these things happen in games where you can't predict them. Injuries happen, and sometimes it is the one position that you're short on because Butler's been out for however long, or when Passenden got injured, Wilding was out injured. But again, like with 35 games into the season, surely we know what we would be looking to do in a scenario where a wing back gets injured. We've already had to deal with it 2-3 times already. And it still felt, as you say, like we were still unsure about what we would do. And I don't know if that's because we've just so set on the 5 at the back, 3 at the back system that we've been using because it's been working, and we've not thought about anything else other than playing that system, and that has to work. But even after, I think it was after they scored their second goal, I think it took us 5-10 minutes on the bench to come up with a solution of how we wanted to react based on the players we had on the bench. And it feels like we're still in that position of not understanding or really having faith or trust in certain players to go and do a job in a system we know that it'll work in, a change that we can make that we know is going to make an impact. Because even the subs that were made, we didn't look any different in terms of how we were playing with a system change and with different personnel on the pitch. So something wasn't working there in terms of what the instructions were. It wasn't about personnel. It wasn't about system. It was about instruction. And it was the same theme when Pattenden goes out to left wing back. If the instructions are exactly the same, but you've got players playing out of position, the chances are it's not really going to work. And like you say, we should have taken that time to bring them in at half time, allow Freestone to get the right instructions for the role he's going to play for the rest of the game, which probably should have been left back. So I just don't really want to see him as a left back. It's a job he's done very well this year for us, and the job he knows well. We ended up playing 3 different systems or different shapes in the game, and I feel like that's always a sign that you're not sure what to do to impact the game. If you're having to go from a 3 back into a 4 back with 1 up front, then you've gone, that's not working. Let's go back to putting 2 up front. It just feels indecisive and just trying things for the sake of trying things. And that never really worked in football.
Yeah, it was a very disjointed performance, both defensively and in attack, I think. Like we struggled to build attacks and create chances of our own because they didn't look in sync coming forwards. And then defensively, the press wasn't coordinated, and you could see that Orient, certainly in the early stages, they're a nervy side. If you can get them under pressure, they will make mistakes. They will not want to take ownership of possession situations. And we weren't able to apply that pressure on the back line when they had possession in their own half to generate those easier chances than creating it from your own possession can be. That'll be disappointing for them looking back on it. And what you described is symptomatic of the goal they scored to take the lead, where Wilding basically had 2 guys to handle and couldn't go to Morris, who had the ball on the left-hand side out wide, because he had another guy with him. Eventually, Louis Thompson came over, but he was too late and too far from the cross that Morris was able to swing into the box. And then somehow Ballard came from behind Freestone across into an area that Pidge should have been in, but Pidge was too far up on the penalty spot, headed it a free header in between Freestone and Good, as it turned out, in a big gap where the actual centre-back should have been. It's a multiple mistake goal that they've conceded, and it's come down from just not being drilled well in that structure. I think we didn't have the protection we needed in front of the right wing back to deal with that situation in the first place, and then we didn't defend our own box well enough from the cross that came in after that first mistake.
Which is very odd for us. Like, that's the one strength that we've had, certainly since sort of Piergiani's been here, is you take crosses into the box all day because you just know he's going to win everything. And both the goals he was at fault for. The first was just kind of beaten completely by Mitchell. He was again on an absolute island with him, beaten, ball through, done. And then I think it got to that point where they didn't want to mark Ballard too tightly because he's that quick that he's just going to get away from him. But then they invited him to have too much space. And the second goal was a similar story where he's just not reacted, and it was really, really poor. And he's had a fair few of those games this season. I mean, he got dropped earlier in the season, and I mean, how he got man of the match last night is absolutely hilarious, by the way.
I mean, he got the highest rating of all of our squads on FOTMob, but it's statistically he does well. But when you watch the game, he only suits very specific games now. I think I was having this conversation with the guys on the East Terrace about what's changed, and I think what we're seeing is, because of how we're slightly developed, how we're playing to be a little bit more on the floor and play a little bit more football, it does open up our defenders to do a lot more 1v1 defending, because you're no longer going long and still have players defending behind the ball. Actually, you've got a lot of players that are getting up the pitch and trying to get involved in attacking phases of play. That means your defense end up being actually the first line of defense when the ball gets turned over. I think we're seeing Pidge in more 1v1 situations that just hasn't been his game and isn't his game defensively. He has been one where you sit deep, you force long balls, and you win the headers. You force balls into the cross, and you win your duels. He's never really been a foot defender in that respect, and now we're seeing him being exposed to doing that more. When you play a 3-back and he's the wide left centre back, and Saxon, or whether it's Butler or whether it's Pattenden going high, Pidge has to defend out wide. And we're seeing that he struggles with doing that. Either he doesn't come out at all when he sits in the box and we allow space for players to drive closer to goal, or he comes out and he gets beaten and they're already in behind us. So against Burton away from home, it works because we were going for a bit more of a grind out the result, be a bit more kind of dirty about it. And he suits games like that, and he had a great game against Burton by the sounds of it.
And the opposition, like I said earlier, like he'll take a Beasley all day long.
Yeah,
so the style of player, and even Sade, as I will forever call him now. Even like, he's not going to be that. I'm not saying he's slow, but he's certainly not a Ballard or a Mitchell who will just has to jog to get past him pretty much. For me right now, Piergiani has been at times this season a real weak link in this side, whether it's 3 at the back or 4 at the back, doesn't really matter. But my biggest worry with Pidge is that he's losing like aerial battles you just wouldn't expect him to lose. It happened a couple of games ago. There were times where you just seen him being beaten in the air, and that was something that you forget the whole. Yeah, we know he's not your ball playing centre half who's. You don't want him to be dragged out wide. I get all of that 100%, but at the same time, he played in that sort of left centre half position when we played 3 at the back, which I appreciate 100% is, it's a different way of playing, a lot more direct, whatever it might be. But yeah, you were still pushing Butler on back then. So he was having to defend in those wide positions. It just feels like, I don't know, if it's a confidence thing. He doesn't seem like the same level of player. And yeah, like, I don't know what people on FOTMob are voting, because to me that was one of the worst games I've seen him play.
Yeah, and he was the weakest link of the back five. Absolutely,
he looked a shadow of himself. And by the way, Luther was also dreadful last night. And for a player that I've always said is 7 out of 10, that's a rare bad performance from him. But it just felt like, and the tactical changes when they made the changes, and it was a roll of the dice at the time, and I didn't mind from a personnel perspective. The only one I didn't particularly think was a good move was bringing Houghton on. I don't think Houghton has that. Like, I'm not saying Louis Thompson was having a good game, but what you're going to get from Louis Thompson is he is a bit more box to box. He's got the legs. Houghton's that shielding, screening centre midfielder who happy to break play up, but he's not going to come and drive the ball forward, and that's his problem.
Yeah. He didn't affect the game when he came on.
You couldn't even put a 5-yard pass together. Let's be honest. But when he came on along, and then you got Harvey White, who's a kind of similar player. He's not going to necessarily come and carry the ball forward. You're relying then on the likes of Kemp or Roberts. You put Phillips out wide, didn't work, and then moved him back up front again. And by that point, it was kind of already done. It was just a really frustrating one last night, because it felt like they're not
really
that
messy.
Good.
It's really messy as an overall performance, and that's never been us. We've always been like, whether it's under Ravel, whether it's been under Evans, whether you go all the way back to Wesley days, like, we've always been an organised team that knew what our jobs were in a system, and we've notoriously not been a side that have loads of creative flair players. That's never been us. We've always been a functional team. But when you're in those moments in games where you're 2-1 down at home to Orient, and you're having to bring on Jordan Houghton to affect the game, it's not going to do what you want it to do. And bringing on players like Labala, who, again, Labala's best moments is when he needs to be defensively sound as a wide player, not when you're asking him to go and get you a goal. Like, that's not what their roles are. Then the two players that probably are the ones that you go, they probably can do a bit of magic, score you a goal or create you a chance, are sitting in the stands. And that's the problem I think we had really last night, was when you're not playing well, what you need is individual players to bring something to the game that it's missing. But the options we had on the bench were too functional. You're relying on Kemp and Roberts to essentially be the spark, and that only is going to give you so much.
We struggled to get the ball to the players who could give the spark. That was the thing. Like, Matt Phillips, when they pushed him out left, he looked like he could be dangerous there, but they only got him the ball maybe twice. And there was a point when I've forgotten the guy's name. One went to him. Freestone, who'd been moved to left back at that point, brought the ball forward in the Orient half, and Phillips was standing pretty much on the left touchline, loads of space. If you're Freestone there, get the ball into his feet as quickly as you can. He's the most attacking potential player we've got on the pitch, in space, in their half, maybe 40 yards from goal. He's going to do a better job than you are driving forward an extra 10 yards and then passing it to the Leyton Orient defensive midfielder, which is basically what happened. So you've got to get your head up there if you're Freestone, see he's in space and get the ball to his feet as quickly as you can so he can do something with it and craft something for the Reeds and Roberts ahead of him. Trying to do it yourself and taking it on and ruining it there is just terrible decision making.
I would have preferred to see Dan Sweeney up front than bringing on Bez Labala with 8 minutes to go, and that's not.
I'm not sure he even touched the ball apart from getting it when it had gone out for a throw and then throwing it to an Orient player to try and speed things up a bit. It was.
Oh, was that when the Orient player was then time wait? Yeah, there was that funny right by the bench. Anyway, nevertheless, the reason I say that is because at least that gives you an outlet to lump the ball up to someone towards the end of that game, because it felt like it was just the same, different shape, but the same results when it comes to the build-up play of how we were playing in that second half when all those changes were made. And I'm not saying that as a slight on Bez. I'm saying that because I just feel like it would have been something a bit different. We saw it with Sweeney last year. I can't remember the game where he scored
Rotherham
towards the end. Was it Rotherham? Yeah, like we've seen that he can just go and cause a bit of havoc every so often. Like, I'm not saying that's what we should be starting. He's not Luke Oliver or Darius Charles. Like, we're not going to go down that route. But 10 minutes to go, you're 2-1 down. You got nothing really to lose. Like, what? Why would you not just be like, you know what, Sween's going to cause some havoc? Because their centre halves, I think, had the easiest 90 minutes they've had all year.
Oh yeah, and I think it comes back to that. I still don't think our management team fully understand or are aware of what each player's role is in the squad. Like, I think we've come to understand that Bez Labala is not a player that's going to be front-footed, make you a chance, score you a goal. But if you're needing a player to come onto the pitch to break the game up from the front and to be supporting a fullback defensively, he actually does a reasonable job. But you don't need that from minute 1 of a game at home. You need
we don't even play that system anymore. Like,
no, we don't even play that system anymore. I mean, I remember he came on away at Barnsley and actually did a relatively good job with Cornick up front, but we were 3-1 down by that point, and actually he did a really good job at being physical, but it wasn't going to get us a goal. And it's where I look at that and I go, I can completely understand having Bez Labala on the bench to have an option when you're winning 2-1 and you just need to bring another player on that's not a defender to help you break the game up, to support a fullback defensively or however you need him to do. But you also need to have the other option that when you are one behind or you're drawing and you want to go on the front foot, you need the alternative. And at the moment, it looks like we're seeing it as Roberts and Kemp are the alternative. And then you've got Labala, Houghton, Sweeney all on the bench there to give you defensive stability, which is, again, completely different to how we used to set up our benches about 3 months ago, where it felt like we had one defender on the bench and 4 attackers because we wanted loads of attacking options to see out to see through games. And that's where I'm still really unsure about what we think this squad should be playing like, what the role of each player is in that squad, and how we can best affect games with that squad. Because that's what we all knew we were screaming out for, was a Chem Campbell or a Phoenix Patterson on that pitch for the last 15, 20 minutes of that game. But we didn't even have the option to do it.
It's a waste, isn't it?
It's also so we changed our formation on the 27th of January. So we beat Peterborough, and that's when we shifted to the kind of 3 at the back system. But we knew we had one left back. Granted, I know Freestone's obviously been playing there quite a bit, but we knew we only had one out-and-out left back, who is Saxon Early, who unfortunately has a track record of getting injured as soon as he's made any kind of run in the team. Not going out and finding someone capable of taking that load off of Saxon and playing. Forgetting the wing backs situation at this particular point, because I appreciate for most of January they probably were just thinking, okay, Freestone and Early, that's enough. But the fact that we don't have but you've got Phoenix, who's played in a wing back position. I'm not saying that's his best position, and I'm not saying that's a position that I'd personally want to see him playing on the regular. But not having him on the bench to potentially cover that situation just feels a bit like, when you've got the likes of Bez, who doesn't really suit that system. Like, you're not playing with wingers anymore. That's kind of where he plays. Where else are you going to put him? Like, you put him on the bench ahead of Phoenix. It just doesn't make sense to me. So unless there's injury problems with Phoenix, he's been out there warming up and running around constantly every game I've watched anyway for the last several weeks. So I can't imagine any injury problems are that bad. Chem has gone completely disappeared and not been seen for weeks. But it'd be really interesting now if Saxon's injury is as bad as it looked. It didn't look great. Be very interesting to. I mean, you've got no choice but to go back to 4, I'm guessing, and have Freestone playing left back. So whether that brings Chem and Phoenix back into the fold is going to be interesting to find out.
Just to kind of finish it off, because we've been going for a while on this now, Christ. It also feels really difficult because it feels like we only have 2 ways. Like, we either play a 3-5-2 or we play a 4-2-3-1. Like, it's one of those. It's nothing else. And I remember watching the game last night and thinking, like, their midfield aren't in the game. They don't want to be in the game. They aren't in the game. We're still playing with 3 players through the middle. Why could we not take a gamble and go for a 4-4-2? Issue is we didn't have the wingers. And it's those kind of things that we don't help ourselves to manage games, because we have these very strict, we've got one system or the other. and that's it. But then also we don't give ourselves the options to be able to do something differently outside of those two systems if a game lends itself to it. And that game, as it inevitably ended up, because we went into a system that had two up front again, two midfielders, it felt like we again were fitting square pegs into round holes because it didn't fit the two ideas that we'd imagined that we could only use in that game. And we just need a little bit of that. It feels like we need a little bit more of that, just common sense to go, you can do something different. It doesn't have to be one of those two options. We can try something different and it can not work. That's okay. But if a game's telling you you might need to do something differently, here's what you're used to, just do it.
Yeah, you've got to give yourself the option to. I think you're right. All right, we've been going 50 minutes. Let's move on. Let's have a quick look at the League One table. I've got the actual up-to-date table, not the one before last night's games this time, just for novelty's sake. Lincoln City lead the way on 77 points from 36 games. They backed up their impressive away win at Cardiff on Saturday with a win last night to move 4 points clear of the formerly high-flying Bluebirds. Cardiff second on 73. And then a 9-point gap down to Bolton and Bradford, who are, well, Bolton are definitely on 64. Bradford are 2-0 up and on 64 as it stands. Stockport a further 8 points back on 56 points, but from 34 games, so 2 games in hand. Could get them a little bit closer. They're not in the best run of form at the moment, though. Huddersfield are bottom of the playoff places, 55 points from 36 games. Reading just behind them on 54 points from 36 games. We are also on 54 points from 35 games. So despite 50 minutes of negativity, we're still one win away from taking back a playoff place. It's still in our own hands, despite everything.
That makes it even more frustrating because
yes, absolutely.
Results around us were pretty good last night, and that as much as I agree with you, we're not in a bad place. You go and beat AFC Wimbledon on Saturday, all of a sudden that doom and gloom disappears. But
we could already be in the playoffs if we
and we'd have been fifth, right? So
we could have, based on the opportunities we've missed. I think we've said this at least 5 times this season, where we could have picked up 3 points and we've only picked up like 1 or none. Like that would put us in probably 3rd or 4th, if not pushing those automatic spots. And I know that's ambitious, but it's the one season. It's the one season we probably could have done it. And it's games like last night and Wigan away and crap like that means that we're going, well, at least it could be worse. And you don't really want to be in that position.
Yeah, it could be a lot worse. Wickham a point behind us from 1 extra game. Plymouth a point behind Wickham, also on 36 games in 10th. AFC Wimbledon, 49 points as it stands, currently 2-1 up against Blackpool. Luton Town banging mid-table, 48 points from 36 games. Barnsley, same points, 34 games. Peterborough have had a bit of a resurgence up to 14th on 46 points from 35 games. Mansfield have 44 points from 34 games. Exeter City, 16th, 42 points from 36. Burton, 17th still, 40 points from 36. Doncaster, also 40 points, but from 35 games. Leyton Orient out of the relegation zone, which is the worst part of last night's result. 39 points from 35 games. A point ahead of Wigan Athletic, who also played 35. A point ahead of Blackpool, as it stands, who have 38 from 36. Rotherham, 35 from 35 in 22nd. Northampton, 35 from 36 in 23rd. And Port Vale at the bottom, currently 2-0 down, 27 points from 33 games, putting all of their energies into the FA Cup for some reason. It's a bold strategy. Let's see if it pays off for them. So, brief chat about Saturday's game. We have a face-off with AFC Wimbledon at the Stevenage Broadhall Lamex FC Way Stadium. Wimbledon currently 2-1 up. They've had a really good run of form in February. I think it was like 3 wins, 2 draws, 1 loss, and another win looks like it might be coming. So 11th, but on the rise. What are your thoughts coming into this Saturday's game?
They picked up some decent results. Like if you look at I mean, Northampton aside, they got a decent point away to Mansfield, beat Bradford, who are obviously having a good year. I think they drew away to Barnsley, if my memory serves me right, as well, which it's not a horrendous result. It's 3-3, that one.
Yeah.
They're definitely, their form is definitely better than I was expecting it to be. I think they are for the way that we've come out of the game on Tuesday night, it's not the ideal game. But at the same time, it'll be very interesting to see how they line up and how they set up against us. I don't think they're going to be overly adventurous. I think they will come to our place hoping to nick something rather than being on the front foot, which is kind of what we want to see. So I think it's going to be a really, really tough game. I think we will go back to 4 at the back. I don't think there'll be a choice in the matter. I think Freestone will come in at left back and probably play Pigeon good with Luther going back to right back. It'll be very interesting to see whether we do that 4-2-3-1 or whether we try and stick with 2 up front, because I think that's where you're going to get the best of Phillips and Reed is having 2 up top. But I can't see how you play 2 up top with 4 at the back with the personnel that we have. Unless you go down the route of a diamond, and anyone who knows me knows I hate a diamond. So let's see what Saturday brings. But I think it's a tough game. I think it's going to be one of those potentially frustrating ones. Just got to hope that we come out of it with the win.
Am I mad to be hoping for Good and Sweeney as the back two?
Probably a little.
No, it's not the first time this season that we would have seen it, right?
Yeah, I think. I mean, I think it's going to be a very similar game to last night. I think it's going to be very similar to when Burton came to us. It's going to be that kind of. I think that's the way that AFC Wimbledon are going to come and approach the game, and therefore we will have more of the ball than we're used to having. I think, compared to the games like Huddersfield at home, where it opened up a little bit for us. And so I think if we go to a 4, we have to have a Kemp or Roberts or whoever we want that to be in the 10. I don't think we can stick with a flat 3 midfield. Whether you put Sweeney in there and alongside Goods to have someone better on the ball probably isn't a terrible shout if you're playing Freestone as a left back. But
Sweeney better on the ball.
He's better on the ball than Pidge.
Well, sure. I
know the bar's not exactly high, but
I mean, I as long as you don't see him trying to take on half the team.
I don't like Sweeney in a back 2, like in a centre-back pairing anymore anyway. But when your option is limited, Wimbledon is a really tricky game, and I think a lot of people will look at it and go, "That's 3 points," but actually they're mid-table. Their away form's pretty good. They've ground out results against teams that you wouldn't expect them to grind results out against. Ultimately, everyone had them tipped for relegation, if not 24th out of 24 at the start of the season, and evidently they've well overperformed what the expectations were. So they're coming into every game with nothing to really lose, and I think that's quite dangerous when we're in the position we are off the back of a loss against Orient. So yeah. As Ravel said in his interview, we have to be better. What better is?
Pretty much every department.
What better is? I'm yet to find out, but that's ultimately what it comes down to.
The main reason Saturday is such an important game is because the next 3 after that are daunting. You got Plymouth away on a Tuesday night. To add to that, you then have Reading at home, who are in a decent patch of form. I think did they lose the last game? They lost to Mansfield last night, but their form is decent. And then you've got Bolton away, who again, I mean, they've had a few draws here and there in the last 5, but they had a hell of a comeback against Wickham a week or so ago, which was
Saturday, wasn't it?
It was like 2 minutes to go. They were 2-0 down, and they come back to win 3-2. So you could get to Easter, and if you don't win on Saturday and those 3 games don't go your way, you're miles off it and you're pretty much done.
Suddenly you're 12th and you're distant.
Yeah, suddenly you're shaking hands with Luton. So you kind of want to be, you kind of want to be winning on Saturday so that you've got some momentum to go into those 3 games, because you're not going to win all 3 of those games. I actually think weirdly, certainly the Reading game could be. I think they will come to our place and be a bit more expansive, and that could probably help us, if anything, because we know we don't like the ball. I think it's different away from home against the likes of Plymouth and Bolton, but we'll see. But yeah, I hate to say must win because it feels dramatic to say must win when there's still so many games to go and there's where we are. But it feels like even just purely from a momentum perspective and from a confidence perspective, you lose on Saturday, the whole place is just going to be down, absolutely down the pan.
Must look like a much more complete team than we looked on Tuesday night when it was totally fragmented. Wimbledon tonight, instantly, Brian Johnson opened the scoring, Marty Stevens a real return of the Borough old boys with Jake Reeves on the bench as well. We can look forward to that at least.
I think Ryan Johnson scored tonight as well.
Yeah, I mean, as Nate has reminded us, Bolton's postponed, so that's going to move. But that's also a week. That's also will be a week off, and so as almost in a similar vein, you don't want to enter a week off in a difficult run or a difficult 3 games of form. So the fact that we've generally gone on a run, if you look at kind of from the end of Jan, a win against Peterborough, 2 losses on the road, then 2 wins at home, a loss on the road, a win at home, a win away, a loss at home. It is a bit up and down, and you kind of want to be able to enter a 1-week break with some sort of momentum to take into Rotherham away, Blackpool at home, Bradford away, where you'd hope to try and get something out of those games as you get to the end of the season. And Wimbledon is one that you would look at and go, at home again, we need to bounce back from losing last night, and actually you got to take something into a game away at Plymouth. Let's be honest, we're not going to have a massive fan base there. It's a Tuesday night, it's a grueling trip, and therefore it's going to be a difficult away game, irrespective of where you might see Plymouth are.
Yeah, the 86 most passionate Borough fans will go along, and that'll make as much noise as we made in the second half. So,
so those games are difficult when you can't take massive numbers to them. And then Reading are one of those teams that you just never really know what you're going to get with them. So you want to be able to enter that week off, that international break, off the back of something to hold on to then take you through the rest of the season. And Wimbledon and Reading are probably the 2 you're looking at to get those points.
Yeah. Well, on that bombshell, hopefully we'll be back on Monday in a much more cheery mood. But fingers crossed, right? We'll get down there on Saturday and we'll cheer them on, and hopefully to a bit more effect than we had on Tuesday night. Eh? Until next time, up the Borough.
You can do your own woo.
I did the outro. It's terrible. Well, I suppose you don't want to woo after that 2-1 loss.